Hello and welcome to the first of our town halls hosted by the Music Therapy Faculty Forum Steering Committee. My name is Andrew Knight. I'm an associate professor of music therapy at Colorado State University. Along with Vicky Vega at Loyola University, we co-chair the Steering Committee, a group of 7 educators looking to host these forums to support music therapy educators and provide a space for important conversations around music therapy education. We believe these are ongoing discussions, and in these town halls, we will do our best to try to have a wide variety of ideas and voices, and on an equally wide variety of topics. When we volunteered to be put forward as committee members, the world looked very different. We are now dealing with a global pandemic, an amplified understanding of systemic racism against Black citizens and bigotry toward other affinity groups, and all in the middle of a rhetorically heated election year. As educators, we have a responsibility to do our own work and develop ways to educate our students about music therapy and how our culture plays into our profession. Tonight, we're turning our attention to the teaching in time of COVID-19, understanding that all of our institutions are in different places in their preparations for the upcoming academic year. I happened to see a Twitter thread from Dr. Clint Smith, who is a writer and educator who seemed, for me at least, to hit the nail on the head, and he wrote, "I think some people really take for granted how much work it is for educators to set up meaningful, engaging lessons for their students over Zoom. There's a bizarre narrative that online teaching is easier for educators, but I don't know a single teacher who thinks that's true. So many educators I know are now spending their entire summer, quote, vacation, preparing lessons for both online and in-person scenarios because they don't know the context they'll be teaching in yet. Our teachers at all levels need our empathy and patience more than ever these days." So with that, I want to thank these panelists for making the time in our, again, to use Dr. Smith's words, our, quote, summer vacations, and for their leadership in putting their ideas and experiences out there for all of us to hear. I've asked each of them to speak for a few moments on their main topic, and then we will have some time for some moderated discussion at the end. You may enter questions into the comments section under this Facebook Live video, and we'll do our best to collate questions by topic area and have our panelists respond. Our first panelist is Dr. Lori Gooding. Dr. Gooding teaches at Florida State University and is president-elect of the AMTA. She is the chair of the AMTA COVID Committee and will speak about what educators should know about the work of her committee. I'll let you take it away, Dr. Gooding.
Great, thanks Andrew, and thanks everyone for being here and for giving me this chance to come and talk to you and for all of the work that you're doing to support our clinicians, our students, and to support each other. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing with the task force and kind of outline where we're headed as well over the next few months. So our job as a task force has been to really provide a forum and provide information, resources, and support for the work of AMTA standing committees, for the work of other task forces, for the work of the assembly, the board, and so on. And so we are not really tasked with making decisions or making changes, but more so in communicating and providing information. And so I hope all of you have had a chance to go to the COVID-19 resource page and take a look. There's information for clinicians, there's information for students, there's information for educators, and it ranges broadly in terms of what we've been able to cover. So we have things on copyright, we have things on PPE and the latest information on aerosol spread and singing and all kinds of stuff that we're tracking and trying to put out for you guys as best we can and as soon as we know about the information. But more specifically to educators, there's very early on we put some resources out in terms of just some kind of teaching strategies and things like that. And then we shifted to provide support to our standing committees, so APAC, AAC, and we worked a great deal with Jaden Cregan to make sure that we're communicating with all those different committees. And of course, we communicate with the board. Since I am the liaison for the board, we have regular communication in terms of keeping them updated and making shifts when we need to. And one of those shifts that we made was we realized that we weren't supporting the educators as best as we could be doing. And so we created another task force that Andrew is actually chairing to put together resources. And I believe he's going to talk to you guys about that a little bit tonight. If I understand correctly, Andrew, it's going to launch today as well, yes? Yeah, he's shaking his head, yes.
We're going to, and we'll have I have a little blurb that I'll explain it to, and we'll add the chat, or I'm sorry, we'll add the link in the chat right as soon as you're done.
Great, perfect. So really providing resources, and I've already taken a look at it. It's fabulous. It's a work in progress, and as is everything in this pandemic. I heard somebody say not too long ago that working, and especially teaching in the time of a pandemic, is like being thrown in the deep end and then being told to learn how to swim after you're thrown in the deep end of the pool. And that is very much what it feels like in many ways, trying to stay on top of everything and get all the information out that we need to. So what I want you guys to know is that we are always open to feedback. Creating of Andrew's task force was because we were getting feedback about the need for more supports. And so I'm very open to that, and I'm very willing to try to move things forward in the way that best supports our students and supports you as educators. And this one is really personal for me since I'm an educator too. It's something that really matters as we move forward. And speaking of that, we are not just connecting with the education side, we're also working with Jeff Wolf and the Student Advisory Board and others to make sure that the students are getting support as well. We were able to offer cafes for them, and we were able to offer some things in Spanish and other languages as well, so that they could connect in and get the support they needed in the format that was most effective for them. So we're really open. We're going to be sending out, or we are already sending out, updates twice a month, roughly, email blasts. And in the early August one, we're going to be outlining some of the resources that exist on the resource page, the COVID-19 resource page, that are really applicable for faculty. So things like the information on mask use and PPE, and as those of you are making decisions about whether you're going to be back in the community and doing clinicals or not, using some of that information to help support your work with students. So just broadly speaking, support. And if you have things that you want us to address more specifically, please let us know. Again, I also am the task force, and there's 6 of us that are kind of standing members on the task force, but we've worked with over 50 people at this point to provide information. So we reach out and we bring people in with expertise as much as we can to put the work out there that needs to go out. So please reach out and let us know. And then if there's something that's not happening that you feel like needs to happen, we can then communicate either with the task force or with the standing committees whose job it would be to make decisions and push things forward. So again, we work with APAC and AAC, standards, et cetera, things like that. So I'm happy to be here tonight and really excited to hear everybody else. And thanks for giving me this chance to get everything kicked off.
Thank you very much, Lori. I also, because you also mentioned APAC, I also wanted to make sure that people know that Susie Sorrell also on APAC, and she's on our steering committee. There she is waving on our panel as well tonight, so that if we move into the Q&A and there's any sort of questions that might pertain more specifically that APAC, that she might be able to tell us about some of their discussions. We're also pleased to announce tonight that the task force that Lori mentioned, it has provided a variety of resources for music therapy educators and supervisors that are curated and available. And we've got the link that's going to be going in the comment section if it's not already there, that you can click on. It's tinyurl.com/mteducators. This work is an outgrowth of that AMTA COVID committee and is a series of PDFs and audio and video resources and a number of topics. And it's not, quote unquote, complete as of yet, because how could anything ever be complete when we're looking for as many resources as we can get our hands on? So if you have more resources, information, links to share, please be in touch with me about that. And then please take a look at those resources, and we hope you find them as helpful as possible as you prepare for the upcoming semester here. Next, I want to move it along. Let's go to Dr. Viega. Dr. Michael Viega is joining us as a member of the faculty at Montclair State in New Jersey, and I asked him to speak tonight because it's a little bit turnabout as fair play because I'm moderating him tonight. Mike moderated a panel that I was on for the World Congress a couple weeks ago, where we were also talking about some big issues in innovation in music therapy and specifically on technology. So Dr. Viega, I'll let you take it away.
Hey everybody, thanks Andrew, thanks everybody. Welcome to my basement and welcome into everybody's lives, this new world of online learning. I've been doing online learning for many years, I've been comfortable with it, but yet, we are all in each other's homes, all in each other's worlds. If I turn the camera that way, you will see toy bins scattered everywhere. I have chosen just to frame the coolest part of my house for you tonight. I'd like to just recognize, as Andrew said in his introduction, that many of us are working overtime to learn new platforms, have them integrate into our coursework. We all recognize that we cannot simply just transfer what we do in a live classroom directly onto using online platforms. There's a loss there, but there's also a lot of great opportunities to discover and innovate new ways of learning in collaboration with our students. Being okay with trial and error, being okay with problem solving over time, being flexible and working individually with each student to find solutions that works best for them within their own environments. And this includes accessibility concerns, and such as Wi-Fi and downloading software and applications, etc. So this is an ongoing learning experience from my end. Letting go and knowing that we are in vulnerable times, and to show that vulnerability as part of the ongoing learning process is very vital at this time, moving into prioritizing stakeholdership and human connection in these platforms. I'm not an expert at all platforms. I do, like for instance, I use Perusall for readings, and we use Canvas at Montclair State University. I love Perusall. It's collaborative and amazing. They make me packages of readings from Barcelona, very cheap, reasonably priced for students to rent for the semester. I think I had 12 readings from the guideline books packaged together that Barcelona put together, especially for my course, and it cost $10 to $12 for the semester. So Perusall's great. I use Padlet a lot, and I'm sure each and every one of you are learning a lot of new platforms as well. I want to speak a little bit more about the music technology end of things and platforms particularly, because obviously there's a lot of conversations and concerns about how are we going to have rich, dynamic music experiences, and that's been my primary focus in really working towards that and discovering and finding new platforms. I have, I'm going to be uploading, I'll put it in the comment section. In fact, I'll just put it in now into the comment section, some resources in Padlet that I've created along with Dr. Brian Abrams, and also a lot of participants who took a CMTE course with us this semester or over the summer, where it has a lot of different resources for online stuff, digital audio workstations, different gear, and also scholarship research really centered around cultural and historical applications of digital technology, focusing on anti-racism, anti-oppression. So please check out those Padlets. They're for you, and you can add to the lists too. All right. There's also, a lot of other people. I'm no definitive expert at this. For instance, Natasha and Bernie Thomas have a fantastic website called BT Playgrounds. Great resource for downloading ink in one of the Padlets I've given you in the comments section. And so, I just want to, when you're learning, and it's going to be overwhelming because there's a lot of new resources, a lot of new learning. I want to offer that if you ever want to contact me, please, let's test some things out. Say, hey, Mike, I want to test out Ableton with you and how I might use it in class. Can I spend a half an hour with you and brainstorm how to integrate it? Because that's the integration part. Knowing too that as we integrate it, we're going to mess up and it's going to not work on one end, and it's going to be, and that we have to, really kind of trial and error a lot of this, and also know that when something doesn't work midway through the semester, don't be afraid to let it go, but also collaborate with students in the process. Again, it's a vulnerable time period, and we have to allow ourselves not to always be experts. And as we're doing this, we're going to discover new ways of being. We're going to discover new possibilities for telehealth. Students are going to lead the way with platforms they already know, and that is going to be a strength leading into this year. So take risks, reframe what it means to have online relationships and what they could possibly look like, and encourage creativity and innovation. I tell you what, doing readings about countertransference and using Padlet to have people throw up GIFs about their reactions to the readings are way more, they tell me a lot more about their reactions than summaries ever would. Raquel, it's BT Playground and Padlet. You'll see a link if you go under one of the Padlets that I provided. I'm actually excited about a lot of the innovations coming through. Things like JamKazam and Jamulus offer low latency, real-time music making platforms. Those are not ready for prime time yet for several reasons. They're really not FERPA compliant. Downloading them and utilizing them, sometimes you have to create a server. They're just complicated, and you can't, people might download and might be open to privacy and confidentiality issues. At Montclair State University, we're big advocates for Soundtrap. You can get educational accounts. We have about 150 seats that could spread across various classes, so each student in different classes could have an account to Soundtrap. It provides a great asynchronistic and synchronistic platform for collaboration and music making. Oftentimes, I utilize remote control on Zoom for people to, making sure that people have access to only the apps I'm using on my computer, such as Logic or other music making programs. And we could create music live in Zoom. I record in Zoom, put the recording, extract the audio from Zoom, put the audio into Soundtrap so we can have real live improvisations, digital improvisations, sound images, sound collages, upload them into Soundtrap so students can further collaborate. There's a lot of innovative ways to utilize over time, utilize these platforms in your classrooms. Again, always open to share what I've done, always open to talk with you about it and just brainstorm. And if it's not me, find someone who will be that person for you. Reach out and just take time and play. I think Tim Ringgold said one time, and I loved it, was that we never say we work music, we play music. And this is a great time to demonstrate how we play and how we experiment with sound and how this is part of our learning process. Soundtrap is FERPA compliant. It offers a lot of great, tools to help with privacy, make sure that people are broken into classes, that they only have access to each other's information, so that there is a lot of benefits to getting an educational account with Soundtrap. Also, make sure to start bringing in significant cultural, historical aspects regarding various digital music cultures, especially when you're utilizing various platforms. The roots of a lot of the various gear and instruments in digital music has its roots in Black, Latinx, LGBTQI plus communities throughout history. Those are necessary to help ground and frame what can be, when we start working with identity creation and creating in platforms, what they can provide in terms of empowerment and resources really stems within their historical and cultural roots. And it provides us the opportunity to shift the focus away from Western Euro aesthetics. A lot of our other folks in various music departments are having a hard time, obviously, taking the choir online or taking traditional classes online. This is an opportunity, in our case, to really experiment and move into more collaborative, participatory music experiences that shift the focus more towards listening, oral traditions, but that also takes us to make sure we bring in the resources needed to support those ways of musicking. So again, in the event, I put in the comments some links to Padlets. I'll share it with the Faculty Steering Committee. Please join those Padlets, add your own resources, contact me at any time and let me know if you ever want to just play, and we'll share what the possibilities are. And there are a lot of possibilities moving forward. Discover, create, innovate. That's where we're at, and it's leading towards the 22nd century. And this is, with all the hardships, there is those possibilities abound right now. So anyway, thanks. That's it.
Thanks, Dr. Biega. I also, I'm just noticing that there's a lot of help for you too. I see there's some people that are putting some of those links into the discussion as well. So thanks very much for the online community checking all that out. All right, let's keep moving on then. Dr. Joy Allen is the chair of the music therapy area at Berklee College of Music and oversees 12 faculty members and 34 clinical supervisors with 147 undergraduate students, 33% of whom are international. Dr. Allen will tell us a little bit about her perspective at a large urban program with such a wide variety of supervisors. So take it away, Dr. Allen.
One day you would think I would get over on muting myself. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I will have to start this by saying that we are very fortunate at Berklee that we do have access to a lot of resources because we're in such an urban area and we have such a large program. And in Berklee in itself does have resources. We are also fortunate in knowing, in which we made the community announcement yesterday, that we are going fully remote. So we're done that anxiety of what we are going to be, and we will be fully remote in the fall, which gives us slightly more chance to prepare. I also want to say that none of the work that we've been able to do would be possible if it were not the collaboration among the faculty and the supervisors, and the outpouring of support that we've also gotten from other faculty and supervisors throughout the country. And that brainstorming and that collaboration that we keep hearing, Andrew and Lori and Mike and everyone else, is so important because it really, I always tell everyone it takes a village. It's taking a village, a country, to really brainstorm and collaborate on a lot of these issues. So thank you for everyone who's been part of those conversations and allows us to be parts of those conversations as well. What I'm hoping to share with you is some of the things that we've done, just like everybody else when it came to March and we had to transition. We had to transition 147 students in our program. 48 of those students were interns at the time, and we're still, I'm going to talk practicum first and then intern because they're two distinct areas and we've made inroads in one and not so much in the other. So when we did transition, what we did was use case study materials. And I will say, I know some people are still in the position that they're going to have to do that. Please go to Barcelona Publishers. They have, I think everyone's familiar with the original case study book that Ken Bruscia put out back, I think that was in the 90s. There is a plethora of case study books through Barcelona, and you can purchase them by chapter. And they're also available through eVersion, which is key. And they're broken down by setting. And then the improvisation case study materials actually have audio recordings and video recordings, which is very rich way to really engage students in a different way. So when we switched over to remote in the spring semester, we did everything through case study materials, and some supervisors were amazing at really digging in and looking at the case studies and say, what would you have done next? How would you have done this differently? Or how are you reacting to this coming from your own values and beliefs on what music and health is? Always asking those questions. What are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about your clients? And what are you learning about music therapy within that process? It was also a great time for them to really start thinking about what happens when you don't have resources. Because I think oftentimes we're so used to having all of our instruments with us, right? We have our instrument carts, we have our guitars, our keyboards. Well, what happens when you don't have those or your clients don't have access to those? And so then it became an exercise in, okay, what could you use? We had one faculty member, I hope she doesn't mind me calling her out on here, Julie Zygo, who sat there and went back to old school. If you have cups of water with different levels and you're making sounds, and you know, what is it that you can find around you to use? And that's going to be something that we're going to have to continue to do in the fall when students do not have access or our clients don't have access to instruments. How can we use the stuff in our environment? So case study materials was a big thing. And again, I cannot stress enough Barcelona's case. I think there's like 12 different case study books available, broken again down by setting, and there are some that have the audio and the video components. We also had supervisors that allowed us to use, there were client approved videos, and we had some supervisors that did role playing together and made videos, particularly at our larger hospitals in the Boston area, where they used interns or one another to make video and case examples for us to use, which was really nice. When we transitioned into summer, we have, I want to say about 24 students in practicum right now, which is actually very low for us. We normally have at least 70 in the summer, but because of student attrition because of the remote format. Right now, what we're doing is all of our students are involved in telehealth opportunities. Some of those are by therapists who had to transition to telehealth. All of our hospitals were still, therapists were still working. Several of the community-based music therapy programs were still working using telehealth capabilities. But the other thing that we did, and this is something I'm really excited about, is we know that we have a need to create new programs because we won't be able to sustain our program because so many of our supervisors are not working. And that's the same for across the country. So what we've really focused on and what we're piloting this summer is really program development, targeting those need areas that are really prevalent right now because of the pandemic. So within that program development, what we have supervisors doing is working with students through all stages of program development. So I'll give you an example. Brigham Women's, which is the Harvard affiliate hospital here in Boston, the head of neuropsychiatry calling saying, you really need us to help with the trauma with the healthcare workers. Is there something you can do to help with the stress levels? And so one of our supervisors, who's very experienced in this area, is worked with our students to develop a pilot program that's being delivered through Zoom. They had to identify the background need of the stress of healthcare providers, what the role of music therapy could be within that, what we know from the research, and then put together a proposed pilot program, including the aims of that program, what it would look like, flyers to recruit participants, and now they're working with the supervisor to implement that over the next 6 weeks. It started 2 weeks ago, and it's been successful. We're doing another one with adolescents to address anxiety and community building. We have another one with preteens with the same concept. And then moving forward, we're really looking at taking that same thing and how can we create so our students are not only learning program development skills, but that we're addressing some of the targeted health needs within our community. And again, using telehealth capabilities to do that. So it's, to me, then our students are learning all phases of program development at the same time of being able to address continued clinical development, and we're helping address some of the needs within our community, which to me is a win-win. With that said, I will say there's nothing without challenges. We're getting ready. We're going to start our re-registration process because we had to wipe schedules and start clean. Which I'm sure some of your universities and colleges are going to be faced with. We will know next week how many students we will have in clinical in the fall. Normally, again, it's about 124 to 127. I'm suspecting we'll probably have closer to 80 or 90 in the fall because, again, people taking the semester off. The student challenges, again, some of our students, because we have such a diverse population from all over the world, as well as not everyone has money for everything. It's instruments. Do they have instruments at their disposal that they can use? Other student challenges is space. We have students who are living, 5, 6 people in the house, people coming in and out. Do they have a dedicated space without interruption? Whether they're just observing a session, that's important that they have an appropriate space that clients see. Time changes is a huge issue. Like, for example, one supervisor this summer, the client needed to change the time of their session. Well, the therapist and client are here in Boston, the student's in California. And so it was an issue with the student having to get up way early in the morning in order to participate. And we're trying to avoid that. And that's going to be a big challenge for us this fall because we literally have students all over the world. So we're really hoping to call on some of our alumni. This is the opportunity where we can use therapists in different countries because it's through telemedicine to look at and say, hey, do we have alumni over in Singapore and Malaysia and Spain that we could possibly have students working with them so we don't have so much of the time zone issue. So with every challenge comes an opportunity. The opportunity is we can provide more diverse experiences. The challenge is coordinating and creating these and making sure that we're doing so in a way that really supports our students. I think I'm going to kind of leave it there. That's a lot in a nutshell. And again, I think that one more thing I wanted to add. sorry, is that the other thing is that we're finding is a lot of our students don't understand what telehealth and telemedicine are. They are wanting to be on campus. You know, our internal survey at Berkeley was 67% of our students wanted to be on campus. We could not provide that because in all of our best intentions, we were going hybrid. And then there's back orders of cleaning supplies, there's back orders of technology. It just is not feasible to keep safe. But a lot of the students within our department, it was they want to be in person for clinical. And so there's a holdout in terms of, I'm going to wait till spring. So it's explaining to them, this is probably the reality for the next year, because we are not putting any students in the clinic in the fall. Even our sites in Boston that are going to open up to students, we're making a decision not to because of the potential of it being shut down, but it's also an equity issue with students who may not have that opportunity or feel like they need to do something that they're not comfortable with. And we don't want to put anyone in that situation. And at the end of the day, it's also liability. And we always have to be precautious of our students' best interests. So none of our students will be in clinic. Anyone who registers for any of our 4 practicums will be in a telehealth situation, whether it's community-based, school-based, or medical. They will be in that experience, but it's explaining to our students what that means, because they don't, especially since we transitioned from case study material to this, they want to work with clients. They don't understand necessarily what that means. And also to know that it's really important that they learn this skill set because telehealth's not going away. And so we are having a webinar next week for our students, which 2 of our faculty members, Karen Watts and Brian Jantz, are leading, where students are speaking to students about their experience with telehealth this summer, as well as some of our interns and their experience with telemedicine, which I think will help demystify some of those concerns and expectations. And lastly, I just want to bring up interns. Like I said, we had approximately 48 students in internships. Some of those students, the internship sites have beyond successfully transitioned to telehealth. Some of our sites are doing kind of a hybrid. Some clients are being seen in person and some are not. And some have not transitioned at all, and there's a holding pattern. And we are seeing some of the trends. You know, in our case, our hospice sites, a lot of them are not seeing clients as regularly. Nursing homes, it's dementia patients who do not do well with the online facilitation. And so we are seeing more of our music therapists in those settings, but our students are hesitant. And a lot of the hesitation is they're so worried that they're going to get someone sick, which really speaks volumes about their ability to care. Our medical sites have been unbelievably creative, innovative in reaching client needs, which is quite exciting. Our school settings, it's again been a little bit mixed with some of the younger kids having more challenges. And in that case, it's been successful for involving siblings in the process. And caregivers, but again, that's not necessarily sustainable because of the issue with the caregivers, you know, having their own roles and responsibilities. So that's a lot of information, and I'm going to stop there. But you know, again, I'm thankful for the ability to collaborate with so many people within this process to help, you know, brainstorm and come up with ways that we can really not only meet the needs of our students, but continue to meet the needs of the people that we work with in our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Yeah, and Dr. Allen is also a case study in sort of how I'm just scanning the music therapy faculty Facebook page, and some of you have just been putting some wonderful resources on there. She put something up there, or maybe it was a post if I'm remembering right, about this practicum thing. So then I ended up reaching out. And then I also wanted to point out that she connected me with two of the people on her faculty, and they put together a really excellent PDF that is on that tinyurl.com/music therapy, or I'm sorry, MT Educators, tinyurl.com/MT Educators. If you go to that site, you can go down and they've got an interactive PDF with a bunch of hyperlinks, and it's got some screenshots, and it's called Tips and Tools for Online Teaching, and that's Brian Jantz and Adrian Flight put that together. So I just wanted to point that out, that they gave us some really excellent materials for the online education portion of things. And now I want to move over to Julie. Julie Cassidy is the Clinical Director of Music Therapy at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. She presents a perspective representative of a smaller university with fewer community music therapists and how they have navigated clinical supervision to this point. So I'll let you take it away, Julie.
All right. I'm so glad to be here and honored to be part of this wonderful panel. We are small, and when I listen to Dr. Allen talk, I am kind of blown away by the numbers that she's mentioning. So we probably had 23 students in field studies last semester over all of our levels. We had 4 supervisors working with all of those students, and 3 of those supervisors worked in our on-campus music therapy clinic. So that's kind of a nice situation because they're very engaged and tight-knit with the university and the needs of the students. So we were able to move probably half of our students to telehealth sessions, and then the other half lost most of their sessions. And what we did was looked at what students needed, how many hours, and we were able to move some students around. And that was mostly our senior students who we knew they needed to finish out those hours to be ready to go to their internship. So there were a couple of those that we were able to kind of pivot to a different session that had moved to telehealth that still kind of fit with the population that they were already working with. So that was a real benefit to be able to have that ability to make some changes there. So the students that moved to telehealth, I felt like that was a pretty smooth transition. Obviously, I think the worst part of the telehealth is getting that experience in prompting and really working hands-on with the other person, because then we're relying on the family member who is there with the person to prompt, and also observing behaviors, because you just can't see quite as much through telehealth. So, you know, in our class and our discussion time, we really worked on how could we best utilize the telehealth situation and make it as effective as possible. Because again, like has already been mentioned, I think this is something that's going to stay with us, and probably in a good way, because it allows us to have nationwide access to music therapy services. We can really expand our reach by staying in telehealth. And I do think that's one of the good things that this awful pandemic is going to give to us that we can take into the future. So the students who did not get to continue in practicum, one of my big concerns was, especially those level 1 and 2 students who are really learning how to document observations during their sessions. You know, I tried to think of how is that learning going to continue. So I kind of searched the web and found as many videos of music therapy sessions that I could find, and I used those. They were then assigned to watch those videos and do documentation of the behaviors that they saw. So they had to actually write objectives and then document the client responses to the behaviors that they were observing. So I thought that was pretty effective. It was hard to find videos that were of good length and kind of consistent. So we just made do with that, and students were able to get hours in watching those videos and doing the documentation. We also really worked as our on-campus music therapy clinic and pivoting and looking at how we could expand and provide different services. Immediately, we wrote a grant to provide music therapy services through telehealth in assisted living facilities. We were actually awarded that grant. And so I'm excited for next semester, because the students will get to work with us on creating videos, providing patio music therapy, window music therapy, and then individual telehealth music therapy to clients in assisted living facilities. So that's kind of already gotten in place this summer, and we will be able to implement that next semester. We used, in helping students also get hours, we used, they attended the regional conference that went online. And so there were specific sessions that they could watch and then write a summary about what they learned and how that applied to music therapy practice with their clients that they had that semester, and they were able to receive some hours for that. Let's see. Oh, we also did, the students that lost sessions as well, we did practicing of interventions through our Zoom class meetings. So almost every class was, someone had to lead an intervention, and that intervention was led on the Zoom platform or pre-recorded on a video, and then they showed that video, and that was their choice. And so then we all got to offer feedback, and then they could work on improving various aspects of that intervention and then bring it back to the class. So that's some of the ways that we kind of implemented and tried to keep that learning going. And as far as going forward next semester, we hope to have everyone either in a telehealth session or live in person. Most of our individuals with developmental disabilities, especially that come to our clinic, we are back at the clinic, very rigorous infection control policies in place. So we're just going to kind of see how that goes. And, we just found out today that the public school is going to, everyone is in school 2 days a week and on virtual learning 1 day a week. And they're having like half of the population in school 2 days a week and the other half in school the other 2 days a week. So it's kind of changing day by day. So we will just see. But I'm hoping that we've kind of got probably 60% of our regular client load that we're seeing with our music therapist. And I'm also reaching out to any supervisors in this area, maybe even far out reaching, to see if we can also offer some of those telehealth sessions from a distance. So I think, just kind of going with every day is a new day and a different situation arising. So, but I think I'm feeling pretty good that we're going to be able to get everyone in a session that we have enrolled. I think we have 25 enrolled for next semester. So just working on expanding that role of supervisors.
Thank you very much, Julie. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if there are dates and deadlines that certain administrators are keeping in mind and not telling the rest of us or something. Like right now, I know that my wife is in a town hall for one of my kids' schools. And I hope that when this town hall is done, I'll go home and hear about her town hall being done, and I'll know something more about whether one of those kids is going to be at school or not. And I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. So that's where we're all at right now. All right. Thank you, Julie. And Daniel, our next guest here, is another example of me just sort of reaching out. I know a lot of you were on the panel that was there on July 10th. He's Daniel Binonis is an instructor and clinical coordinator at Immaculata University, and I asked him to join this panel so that he could summarize some aspects of that Zoom call that happened, like I mentioned, that many of you were on July 10th, and that featured panelists from several schools in that tri-state area that were looking to collaborate on ideas to provide supervision opportunities for students. So I asked Daniel to speak after Joy and Julie, since we've got those two very different school situations, and let's find out what we might learn from a more large-scale picture from Daniel. So go ahead, Daniel.
Hello, everybody, and thank you to the Faculty Steering Committee for having me here today. As Andrew said, we had a very large clinical coordinators meeting for sharing of resources on July 10th. The AMTA did just send out that video in a memo a couple hours ago. So if you're interested in watching that, that is there. And just a little bit about we as the Coalition of Philadelphia Area School Clinical Coordinators, that's Immaculata University, Temple University, Drexel University, Rowan University, and Westchester University. We came together, and as many of you had said, it's time to get creative and it's time to get collaborative in the things that we're doing. So I don't want to be too redundant about what was already talked about in the July 10th meeting, but I do want to give a little bit of a recap. the coalition kind of started as a way of like, well, what are we going to do now? Let's come together and see what we can do that's best for the students. And so our first line of defense and, well, how do we get more clinical hours for our students was there was an alternative hours menu that was created by Peggy Tileston at Temple University, and this is available to share as well. And it was a variety of different online learning, archived footage, and other alternatives that students could come together and use that as resources to get their clinical hours. And then we also had a separate hours log documentation sheet that was created by Corey Olver from Immaculata as a way to keep track of what these students are doing. We were really trying to just work smart and not work hard. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's already difficult enough going back and forth. Are we online? Are we face-to-face? Or is it both? Is it hybrid? And then things are changing every minute. So as I said, it's time to get creative and collaborative. In addition to the alternatives that we were trying to offer for students, we also tried to come together to have collaborative learning experiences for students across universities. So we were able to offer a body percussion workshop for all the students of the universities that I'd mentioned that are in the coalition. And this is a resource that students could then take, that if they are engaging in telehealth, they could go and use this with the clientele that they're working with as well. Something that, so I'm going to talk more about the meeting that on July 10th in a moment, but something that I think is really important to mention is, I know that we are kind of all having a difficult time with how are we going to go back in the fall, what's going to happen for students, what's going to happen for fieldwork placements, et cetera. We definitely, and I think everyone is already doing this anyway, but we need to keep our supervisors and we need to keep our students in mind, because they're also having a difficult time in doing this. And so one thing that I have found that's really important in the supervisors that we are able to hold on to in the face of the pandemic is letting them know that we're here to support them in any way, and offering supervision or additional supervision for any supervisors that are currently seeing or overseeing any of our students, whether it's telehealth or in person, whatever is allowed. And so there was a lot of really great resources that were shared on the meeting on July 10th. They are also available. I believe they were also sent out in the memo by the AMTA. And so a lot of the discussion was about what are the best platforms for telehealth? What are the best platforms for teleeducation? One thing that I think was really important that came up that unfortunately we didn't have enough time to talk about because we were so focused on, who's doing what from each site, is the mental health for our students, and how are we making sure that we are taking care of the mental health or supporting the mental health of our students throughout this process, because as I said, it is difficult, not just for us, it's difficult for them as well. So a lot of people had shared, again, I can send this email to, or this memo to anybody that hasn't received it, but different resources for helping students with mental health throughout this whole thing. Joy and Julie had shared a lot of what I wanted to share already. But as I said, it's time to get creative and it's time to get collaborative. That's all I really have.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I saw that a couple people, looks like they had posted the link that you mentioned. That link is also on that tinyurl.com/mteducators, and like you mentioned in the APAC letter, and I think I saw Becky Engen also spell out Academic Program Approval Committee. We've got a lot of acronyms flying around with COVID and AMTA and all that as well. I want to invite you all of you that are joining us right now, if you haven't dug into the discussion, or if you have any questions, you can certainly put something down there for our panelists. Raquel from our steering committee is on the Zoom call, and she's helping me sort of wrangle any sort of conversations, discussions, questions, topic areas that might be coming up. And the first one is going to go to you, Dr. Viega, and this is a question about a little bit of the technology that might work for you. I'd love to know more about using DAW, that's Digital Audio Workstations, DAWs, for telehealth, specifically Mac OS and either GarageBand or Audacity over Zoom. Any sort of tips that come to mind for you, Dr. Viega?
Yeah, so, the Padlets that I shared earlier, there's a lot of various platforms. I tend to try to steer away from having people download anything on their end, because you never know what, in terms of computers and what they have on their end and what might be, spyware or whatever they might be downloading. And everybody has different systems. Everybody has different connectivity issues. So it's really hard. There's a lot of, in that Padlet, there's a lot of online resources for online samplers and drum machines and digital audio workstations. But if I have Logic, for instance, Logic Pro, which is the more advanced version of GarageBand on my end, and I have various plugins, I can hit share screen, and I can hit give remote control access to a student, and they can use their keyboard as a QWERTY keyboard to trigger MIDI loops on my end. I can improvise with those in whatever, either digitally or with my guitar or whatever. There's some online tools in the Padlet. You'll see one that's a QWERTY jam that uploads YouTube videos, and you could jam together using your QWERTY keyboards. Or if you have a little MIDI keyboard at your workstation, you can do it there. So, what I usually do is I give that remote access, and in Zoom you can give that remote access and only give remote access, of course, to the app you're working with, so they don't have room, they don't have access to all your stuff and all your messages coming in. And so you want to be careful about that on your end. So, I utilize a lot of different platforms, oftentimes, maybe focusing on a current event and giving it a soundscape, giving it a sonic image, processing the metaphors that are coming up in our work together, giving them sound images, creating them together as a class, looping them into a digital audio workstation like Ableton or like Logic. As we have that going, we're recording. Every Zoom session has a cat butt and a dog sound. So I'm hearing someone's dog right now, and that's awesome. When you have that looping and creating, and you're recording in Zoom, that recording, when you transfer that recording into a file, that recording has an audio link, right? It records the video and it extracts the audio too. You can upload that audio into Soundtrap or into a digital audio workstation. You can edit it so that you get just that moment, and then they can collaborate on it after class and add to it, add narrative, add things. So a lot of our assignments are really strictly music and creativity based, giving them those creative assignments, because a lot of the traditional assignments, don't really transfer. And everybody's schedule, when you have a student who is living with someone who is autoimmune, who is and they're worried about bringing groceries in, and bringing groceries in takes like 5 hours because everybody's disinfecting. When you're working at that level of constant stress, and to be punitive about every assignment with somebody and they didn't do the reading, you got to really think, what can we do to maximize the creativity, the processing, and also watching out for workload, because all the students are overworked. And we got to be really understanding that when we get on Zoom, maybe it's not the best place to do a 2.5-hour lecture. Maybe it's the better place just to check in, connect, create music together, find new platforms, explore. Save those lectures for a video presentation that you upload into Blackboard or Canvas. But use this time to check in, and only keep it to an hour so that people don't get Zoom fatigue. But that's kind of what I have done in terms of utilizing digital audio workstations and giving a lot of resources, again, to the history of a lot of that gear and a lot of that way of working and listening and creating. So anyway, again, if anybody wants to talk more about that and see it in action, I'm happy to have a Zoom thing, and we can jam on some of those platforms I provided in Padlet.
Thanks very much. At the risk of this becoming just a dialogue between me and Dr. Viega, because I could ask him about all these sort of tech and doc questions and everything for a long time. I'll also say that, like, I usually teach composition on campus in the spring semesters, and I've made the repeated mistake of thinking that my students know what's happening with GarageBand, or they're way ahead of me on some things, and that's definitely not the case for all of them. So I've found myself having to sort of back up and empower some of my students who do have those experiences to step up and take a leadership role and be able to partner with the students that have never explored something like GarageBand or Audacity in their life. And then the other thing, when you're even talking about that bigger picture of creativity and music creation and everything, all this other stuff can really be something that stifles that sort of creativity when it's about the grade and when it's about how many minutes something has to be and exactly how many instruments you have to use and everything, when creativity really needs something else and some openness to let them blossom with it. So
Hey, Andrew,
it could go back and forth.
I think I have sharing capability here. You want to jam with me? It'll take 1 second. You want to jam with me? I'll show you.
I was going to ask you to DJ a little bit at the
Well, no,
outro, but this is good too.
So I'll show you.
Yes, please.
I'll share my computer sound. Okay, so this is a NYU Music Lab. It's the A-QWERTY keyboard. Let me just when can you hear that on your end? Can you hear that, Andrew? You can? Okay.
I got it.
I didn't know if you could hear it. So I'm just using my QWERTY keyboard, my QWERTY. I keep saying QWERTY and the word makes me giggle.
Yes.
It's just, I'm just using my regular keyboard. So people don't have to have fancy equipment on their end. I can go to, remote control access, give Andrew remote control. So I'm waiting for him to control my screen right now. So now he can move his mouse over my screen. And he should, all right, now hit your QWERTY keyboard. Hit your keyboard, Andrew.
I'm pounding away.
Make sure you have access. Yep, there you go. You just did it. Yep.
Oh,
Right,
I see. It's just a
and
little
so-
bit of lag.
Yeah, a little bit of lag.
I got it.
All right, so now I'll play the bottom 2 rows. You play the top 2 rows. Now you should be able to, I'm waiting for you to control my screen. So go ahead and move your mouse over. There you go. All right, so you get the idea.
Did I just notice? I only paid attention at the very end here. I think, did I just notice everything was just kind of in D7 there that I was able to use? All right.
Yeah, so like I could control like what sound comes out. I could control the key. I can control, the sound and everything like that. So, we can choose any song that anybody wants to put in there. And that's just like one example of a way that we can have some maybe real time experimentation and play, right? Like just have fun with it. But there's a lot of that out there that is available for people. So, that's just one thing I might do. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. And I just had more fun than everybody else on the screen right now. That's good. Thank you. I wanted Susie to say a little something. Susie's on our steering committee, but she also serves on that academic program approval committee. And Susie, I'm wondering if you could just give us a little summary of that memo that went out, the July memo from APAC, in terms of what APAC's doing amidst all of this.
Okay, hi everyone. I just had a lightning storm here, so I'm on my phone. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Had to switch platforms, very techie. So I just wanted to say everybody should look for this memo because it highlights some of the things that APAC has been doing since all of this pandemic began, and all of the work we've been doing this summer and that's ongoing. A lot of it has been discussed tonight with the speakers, which is great. APAC, which is the Academic Program Approval Committee, really stresses that there's a lot of flexibility with how people can meet their students' clinical requirements, and that there is no particular schedule or number of face-to-face hours that are required. That's the biggest thing we really want to stress. So everybody's creative solutions to how to meet, to help students meet competencies can be done in a lot of different ways. And I think we've heard a lot of that, but you should just know that that's supported by the standards right now in AMTA. So just to reiterate, role playing is not allowed. So all these other things about looking at archived works and telehealth and case studies, yes, all supported, observing, assessing, planning, and demonstrating, implementing treatment plans for even clients that we're reviewing, but working with each other, role playing is not considered to be meeting the standard. So we are also, we're working on addressing equity and inclusion. Obviously, there's so much going on in the world. And I think the biggest thing we want to stress about this is that we have standards, but we're always making modifications to address the current needs, including the pandemic, including ideas of addressing equity and inclusion for all students. And we understand that the standards may have created obstacles for students, for therapists, for supervisors and faculty, people of color, and we are trying to meet the needs. We understand that we're part of a system, and we know that sometimes we need to make systemic change to address that. Other than that, I would just stress that you should read it carefully. The COVID task force resources are also listed on this memo, so you're going to get them in a lot of places. And there's also information about distance learning. Since we all have to jump into distance learning, we have actually a way that you have to be approved to be for distance learning. But of course, none of us had the opportunity to do that. All of a sudden, we're all doing distance learning. So please read over the actual, how you go about being approved for distance learning. And we're giving a lot of time for this, for people to look at the guidelines. And if they think they're going to be, as we all do think we're going to be in this hybrid distance learning for beyond a year, or if we decide that we actually want to keep going with this, then it's important to look to see how you could be approved. Currently, only graduate programs can be approved for distance learning, but we're going to be looking at this in our next meeting and addressing what might be needed in terms of providing guidelines for distance. That's basically the gist of it. There's more, so I just encourage everybody to read and reach out to APAC if you have any questions. Everybody, there's a regional representative, and you can find all that information through MTA, through Jane Cregan, through our co-chairs, Becky Engen and Michael Sanders. I'm the Mid-Atlantic regional representative. So thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. If you're okay with just a quick follow-up, there was a question on the chat. Can you speak to anything about the nature of role play, and if there's any discussions about why those hours are or aren't allowed as experiential hours?
Yeah, I cannot really speak to the genesis of that. I could just say what's come up in some of our discussions. So, and I could go back to the committee and ask them about that. But my feeling is there are a couple issues really. There are ethical issues with kind of pretending to do therapy with a peer. So in terms of dual roles. So I would imagine it could cross the ethical boundary, even though we're play acting. Things do occur during play acting. And also we follow a protocol of having to identify who is a client and identify the strengths and needs of those clients while we're developing treatment plans. And that's really not possible to do. You can play act, but we really have to be with real actual clients. So I can go back and get more information about that, but that's kind of the thinking, that even looking at archival footage would probably be closer to the work than role-playing peer-to-peer. And I just think there are all kinds of ethical issues involved in doing that with dual roles.
Thanks, Susie. And Vicki, you chimed in just also being on our committee, but also with your experience on a number of these different panels and forums and everything. What would you like to say to that?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Yes, I was on APAC, or it was just called the Education Committee when this came up. So along with what Susie said about ethical situations, because sometimes our students participate in mock sessions authentically, also as well as inauthentically, and things come up. But the other reason was that there were some programs that were only doing mock sessions for field placement. So that is why that originally was put in. But the ethical situations that occur that we all see in our classroom is actually a more prevalent reason not to support that. But going forward, it is something to look at on a short-term basis. But I think right now in the era of technology, we have a lot of other avenues, you know, with these archived videos and the case studies to use with our classes, where 20 years ago we didn't have any of that. So that was like the history behind it.
Got it. Thanks very much, Vicki. And just to also add that this isn't necessarily even tangential to practicum supervision. So a question for Joy and Julie and Daniel, and Joy, I'll ask you to speak to this one first, but can you think of, for each of you, can you each think of some particularly innovative change you think that you're excited to potentially roll out in the fall, something that you think will be happening that will affect practicum, or if it's a telehealth thing, or if it's a simulation thing, or whatever it might be that you think is particularly innovative and will be interesting? And could you walk us through that so we can imagine what that might look like in the upcoming semester?
So I would say the thing that I'm personally most excited about is some of the programs that we're developing with the students through and using telehealth as a resource. Background wise, I come from a very social justice background, and it's something that I think is very important. And I'm fortunate that we have the opportunity right now up at Berkeley to be able to shift how we're being forced to shift to think a different way. And this really allows us to target some of the health disparities in our own community and help the students learn program development skills in a way that is going to serve them well in the future, but also allows us to really, you know, if you think about it, you know, I know some colleges have on-site clinics, and I've always been a little bit against it personally. Not that they're not great, so I'm not saying anything bad about anyone's program. But my concern has always been about making the community come to the college, and how that in and of itself sets up a lot of barriers. You know, for people who are working multiple jobs, just the time to get to a place is difficult. The transportation is difficult. And it also sent in the message that you come to us when we're talking about more community-based work, if we can go there. So I'm really excited that we're going to be able to take the opportunity to target some of that, because we do have the grants that are very easy to get to make sure that members in our community do have access to the internet, and to have safe places where they can be able to tune in using Zoom. And I'm also really excited that I do think it's imperative as therapists that we keep in mind what the resources of our clients have. And a lot of times we do get fancy with a lot of things, but sometimes we need to remember that can be make things inaccessible for our clients. And so how can we think in a way that sometimes we have to simplify, and sometimes that simplification is needed because life is overcomplicated, and this gives us a new way to think. So it's not anything new and innovative per se, but it's a new way of thinking, and to me that makes me really excited.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Thanks very much, Joy. Julie, anything in particular that you think will be interesting for you to watch as you see practicum really start getting going in the next couple of weeks?
I don't know that I have a whole lot to add. I think that having our students create videos that will then be actually used with actual clients in the future, and that will be used over the long term. And so I think just learning that process, learning how to create a good video that is good quality. And also, Joy has mentioned a lot about program development, and we do that in our upper level practicums with our seniors, and they have to create or write a grant for a program, and then kind of their last semester, they have to implement that. And so create all the paperwork, all of the things that go with starting a new program. So we already have some ideas. We're working with the Alzheimer's Association on trying to implement teletherapy with people with Alzheimer's disease that are actually living at home. So we're looking forward to having some students to be working through telehealth and implementing this new program. So we're just constantly looking for new things that we can do and other ways to reach the community that we maybe weren't doing already.
Yeah, I remember when everything first started happening about late March or early April, I remember my Google News alerts for the term music therapy started turning up all these people singing outside in parking lot circles and, outside of windows. And I thought, holy smokes, how are they able to, are people able to, like, we've already got, older adults, maybe they can't hear as well, maybe they have hearing devices or something. And then there's somebody on the outside with, how's this all working? And just being fascinated, but also inspired that people were trying to make that extra effort to keep music happening too. And I remember what you were mentioning before in your first statement, Julie, about that. So thank you very much.
Add on real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Joy.
I'm glad Julie brought it up about the recording, because that is something that we're looking into as well, is that as appropriate, if we can record the sessions, because then we can start creating video banks for future learning purposes. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think that's a necessary move for our whole profession.
Andrew, let me jump in for a second there too, just to say that on the COVID resource page, the music therapist Amy Furman and her team did some great examples of videos, and that link is on the COVID resource page. If anybody wants, they walk you through how they did it and then show you some of the examples of the videos that they did.
And so that one specifically is on the COVID page, and there's also a really excellent resource that I know has been circulating this particular the music therapy faculty Facebook page that Carolyn Moore at Sam Houston State has put out. That's also linked at tinyurl.com/mteducators, that the site that I keep on mentioning and everything. And there's a long list of clinical video that I think is going to be absolutely invaluable when the fall semester comes up too. Daniel, anything else to finish up this little path that we are on, talking about what are the kind of clinical innovations that you think you're excited for the fall?
Yeah, similarly, in the face of like so many music therapists being out of jobs and us, struggling to find supervisors at times, as we are trying to also focus on some program development via telehealth and creating new resources and creating new programs that we're hoping are going to last, far after COVID's over, starting off telehealth and then eventually coming into facilities. Something else that I'm really looking forward to doing is some of our advanced master's level students who are already certified are going to be starting to mentor some of our undergraduates that aren't certified and helping them get hours in the creation of some of these programs. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to turn out.
Great, thanks very much, Daniel. And then I just happened to see people adding some things below here, and I am also I see Sharon put something that St. Mary of the Woods is working on. So it seems like this is going to be a nice test of all of us to see how well we can do, or how much of our kind of archival footage and that sort of thing, and what is ways that we can figure out how to help our students have these more interesting experiences than bring something to life and bringing it off the page, so to speak. I see a couple of other things that are happening in the discussions for now. I wanted to point out, thanks, Jim. I see Jim Hiller posted about role play as the undesirable way to train students. Check out Brusha, Self-Experiences in Music Therapy Education, Training and Supervision. Look at his chapters and Kathy Murphy's chapters there as well. And then a question here, maybe this is more broadly for the educators. I see Ron Borzon. I'm wondering how everyone is dealing with online tests over learned, and then in parentheses, we hope material. Anybody on the education side who might want to talk about that aspect of, the online tests? Is everyone's screens accidentally freezing right now? Not touching that with the 10-foot pole?
I'll jump.
There's your answer, Ron.
I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
The latter part of the spring semester, I didn't do any traditional tests. There were a lot of questions I had about it. And so I did more project-based things. And I really think that it was more assimilating a lot of different information in what was counted as their exam instead of spitting out information. So I really liked that going totally online with undergrads really forced me to think about this differently. And I was very pleased. So I don't know if I'm going to go back to the multiple choice kind of thing again. You know, it just didn't seem to work, wouldn't work well with the students that we have. So that's what I did.
Joy, I saw you were unmuted. Did you have something for that one, or
I
is
was
that
just going
just
to say, we tend to do more project as well. And I think that works well. Or I can't speak for all of my faculty. I know when the courses that I was teaching, I would do short polls on Zoom to see if they knew the information. In other words, I'd do the Zoom question poll so that it wasn't a graded per se, but for them to be open and honest so I could see how they were integrating the materials. Because I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that, you know, a lot of our students have been traumatized. Our international students have been extremely traumatized, and that the more information recalls one thing, but, you know, coming from a trauma-informed perspective, what is it that they absolutely need to know, but what are the resources that we need to know that they know how to access, but more importantly, how are they integrating and understanding the materials? So I think that's where we kind of come from, the more project-based in that sense, which does make it harder on educators because grading in rubrics, multiple choice is much easier to grade. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. I was just agreeing and nodding my head because I see that Sharon wrote, I think for earlier courses, the quizzes and online tests work for general knowledge, and then agree that other types of projects are better for upper level. That's a little bit of an offshoot, I think, of what you're just saying, Joy. And then I'm also with Hakeem Leonard. And I should have said before also, thank you very much to both Hakeem and Brian Abrams, who are obviously they're the ones who are moderating the Facebook site and then allowing us as a steering committee to put this event up there. But then he mentioned something about that mainly we're looking at those online quizzes and things for kind of low stakes checks. I don't even call them quizzes just because I feel like if I can fake students out, I can do it by saying that it's not a quiz. It's it's a low stakes assignment, or I'll just call it like I forget what some of my different voodoo terms are, but it's like a reading check or something like that. It's not a quiz, so they don't have to feel the anxiety of whatever that might be. And I also wanted to point out one thing, one of the resources as well that was on the that's on the page, tinyurl.com/mteducators. The very first thing on the top left is I did a roundtable earlier this week with students from wherever I could get some students, and I had them kind of respond to similar questions, like what are the things that they are thinking about in terms of practicum, what are the things that went well for them with online learning and everything. So if you're interested in getting more of the student perspective a little bit more broadly, then make sure you go to the website and then you can check out that video. It looks just like this. It was just a Zoom recording where I kind of just put them all together in a roundtable format so we could do some talking about that. Lori, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that if you do use tests, and I'm like everybody else, I use very few. We do a few just because the certification exam is a test, and so we want to give them that opportunity to take tests. I actually, years before COVID, moved all of my tests onto Canvas, and so they're already online. In Canvas, I have to put all the answers in, but then it grades it for me instantaneously. But it also gives them an experience of taking tests online, which is what that certification exam is going to be too. So there are, with COVID, honor system or open book, whatever, it was fine. Just take the test, because for me, it was more about that experience of that online test taking and preparing them for the exam than it was the actual content of the test.
Got it. Thanks very much, Lori. I also sorry, I'm just noticing that I'm looking here at the discussion, trying to go back and forth and making sure we're connecting all this stuff. I'll make sure that that I get the actual URL for that page in there. We're going to add a couple other things here as we're winding down for the evening. We're going to add the link to that music therapy educator resource site. We're going to add a link to a survey that's just going to be for us as the steering committee, so we can get a better sense of how we can keep on improving these town halls and everything for you. But I just wanted to start with a thank you again to all our panelists and to all of you for joining us and giving this town hall format for our steering committee a shot here. And just a few final items before we sign off here. We're pleased to announce that our next town hall will focus on anti-racist practice in music therapy education. The steering committee will be working with Drs. Hakeem Leonard at Shenandoah, Natasha Thomas at IUPUI, and Malia Belgrave at Arizona State University to organize this event in late August. We encourage faculty to engage with the Academics for Black Survival and Wellness, the 21-day training, which has a cycle starting on August 1st. There's a link for this training in the music therapy faculty Facebook group, and I saw that it was Natasha, Dr. Thomas, that posted it either earlier today or yesterday, so it should be easy for you to find that, and that there was already a cycle that happened in June as well. Also, we want you to know that students have been really active with these issues. AMTAS, the American Music Therapy Association for Students, the national student body, is hosting installments of Conversations Around Race and Cultural Education, CARCE, where they will be having discussions on curriculum at the collegiate level and how it addresses or fails to address anti-racism, issues of bias, and cultural humility. Please check out the AMTAS Facebook page and share this engagement opportunity with your students when you can. In the comments and in a follow-up email, we're going to add a very short survey for you to do and for you to take as an attendee today. Please click on that link and help us inform these educator town halls in the future. Really should only take about 3 or 4 minutes for you to do that. If you have any questions or comments, we as the steering committee have an email address, and that's just musictherapyfaculty@gmail.com. And that's also the email address that you can use to make sure that that is added to your contacts list in case anything goes to your spam or your junk email from that email site, musictherapyfaculty@gmail.com. And remember, you can watch this town hall again, or you can let a colleague know where to find it on the Music Therapy Faculty Facebook page. And so that's it for tonight. I want to again thank our panelists, and thanks for all of you, and hope you all have a good rest of your evening and a great weekend. Thanks very much for joining us.